Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to this week's edition of Learning Collective. We had a great session this morning with Debbie Richards already, talking all about immersive learning. And if you guys missed the live stream, it is, of course, still available for replay here on our Facebook page and will be imported over to our YouTube channel shortly for availability there as well. But I'm very excited to welcome this morning Danielle Wallace from Beyond the Sky. She is a former marketer, and I'm, on the marketing side, I'm excited that this topic is coming to the forefront in L&D because it's so useful in the marketing side to have user personas when you're trying to sell your products and solutions. And now to have this converted or over to L&D and learning more about creating and developing learner personas so that you can have a successful learning program. And that's why we've asked Danielle here this morning. And for those who are not familiar with Danielle, I'm going to share a little bit about her here. So Danielle Wallace is the Chief Learning Strategist at Beyond the Sky, a provider of custom learning solutions. Previously, as a marketing executive with Procter & Gamble and PepsiCo, she learned strategic marketing and advertising principles, which she now applies to learning and development to make learning stick. Danielle is also a certified training and development professional, CTPD, and her monthly infographics on applying marketing into L&D can be found at beyondthesky.ca. We'll make sure to share the website as well so that you can follow Danielle and be sure to take advantage of the monthly content that is useful for everyone. So welcome, Danielle. Thank you so much for being here.
It is so delighted to be here today. Thank you so much, Anne.
Oh, absolutely. As I'd mentioned to you in our conversations, I was really drawn to the description of your session because this is a topic that is really at the forefront now. And I was like, oh, this is so great because we're trying to get folks to think in those terms of a user persona, a learner persona, and that had not been the case in the past.
There's so much applicability, and I'll speak to it as it relates to learning and development. Just one example of the many of things that could be ported from the marketing industry, tweaked and refined, and put out to create better learning solutions.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, one of the things that we had planned for this year with RIS was putting out a piece of content called "What Can L&D Learn from Marketing?" So I think a lot of what you're sharing here is going to be applicable to that content as well. And I'm going to say hello to Duncan, who has so graciously already put in your URL for me. Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you so much.
All right. So, shall we get started with your discussion?
Okay. Lovely.
All right. Let me go ahead and pull up your presentation here.
So I'm so delighted to be able to share with you, as I mentioned, some of these missing secrets that really can help you create a better learning course. So as I mentioned, I'm Danielle Wallace. Prior to my career in learning and development, I did have the confession of being on the dark side and got people to buy more Swiffer. I got people to buy more Doritos. I got people to buy more Mr. Clean and what have you. And despite that, there's so many different things I use to change behavior that I can now use to learning and development to change behavior. And that's what I'll be sharing with you today in particular. And I'll be sharing with you some examples, both from my own learning and development experience, a case study, as well as a marketing example. What I would typically do to sort of show you that, hey, so I will be showing that learning and development often gets this wrong. And you may also see that perhaps marketing might also often get this wrong. I'm showing up on my screen here. Save $1.50. Normally I'd give this out to everybody here. Love Child, organic food made for little ones. Oh, it's baby food. Okay. So typically I would give that out to everybody when you come in. And I would love hearing people's faces is like pretty interesting. So, Anne, imagine I'm giving this to you. Like, that's it. Just, hey, here's a coupon for organic baby food. Any thoughts that come to your mind?
I would go, oh, okay. One, because we're either at a marketing conference or an L&D conference and all that. Why is she handing out a coupon for organic baby food? and I don't have any children, so that wouldn't really apply to me. So yes, I would be a little puzzled as to why you're handing out this coupon.
Exactly. And that's normally the feedback I get. It's like, WTF? What is Danielle
Exactly.
doing? So this is a real example. It's at our train station nearby. There was people giving out baby food coupons to everybody. Everybody. So interesting execution. Maybe you can appreciate this from a marketing perspective, jumping
Yeah.
to execution, without going back and thinking, hey, who am I targeting? At the train station, I'm getting everybody, just like we would have on our session today. I'm getting everybody. I'm not getting people who would actually buy baby food. I'm not getting probably young moms and such. I'm getting everybody. So marketers actually often get it wrong. And we see this as well in learning and development, who gets it wrong. I had a client um, that they asked me to create some training videos to create some more sizzle, because their current onboarding process just wasn't working. So he, like, this is legitimate. They asked me to create some sizzle. Okay. um, but through uncovering the strategy, it was realizing that they didn't need sizzle to make people motivated to take their onboarding training properly. They actually had other issues to uncover, and taking that strategic step back would allow them to think about what's relevant. So Jess is getting coupons, like giving you coupons today, Anne, or everybody else on the call. Coupons is completely irrelevant in today's session. Our learners see this too. They may take an e-learning course, for example, that is irrelevant to them. Irrelevant. They may take other nice to know information within a course that is not related to the job. It's not practical. So while it seems silly that we could have an example such as giving baby food coupons, or even this real example where my client, who is not shown here, where he asked me to create some sizzle. um, our learners are actually experiencing that. This actually does happen. So this is why today I'm going to be really looking at this a whole idea of learner personas. Specifically, we'll be looking at three things. We'll be looking firstly at using data, and using data to really draw our insights from. Secondly, using analysis to create our personas. And then thirdly, using the personas to make decisions. And all of this, of course, will be incorporated into some new ideas you can apply into learning and development. So as I mentioned, I started my career at Procter & Gamble, and shown here is A.G. Lafley. His big mantra, which just permeated all of our brains, was that the consumer is at the heart of all we do. Like, I think that's imprinted in me now. And the whole idea of that is just to immerse yourself in your target audience. And you would do this in essence through a more detailed audience analysis. Um, this basically means that the whole learner becomes the center and the heart of all of our learning strategies. And again, it sounds easy and like, oh, yeah, of course we do that. But I can't tell you how many times we embark on learning projects where, leaders may think they know, but don't actually, which is why it's so important to actually get data and insights and actually get closer. Um, the whole point of a learner persona is that it comes into play as an architect of a fictional representation of who your learner is, and it's brought to life. So with this fictional representation, you can suddenly be able to draw better insights and create better learning solutions that hit the mark and don't feel like sizzle videos on an onboarding program. So the key with this, though, is really getting data. So there's a few ways to get data. Um, some things that I did with my example from this onboarding training is I actually observed new hires. So it was great. I sat in a corner and I observed them. I observed them getting trained. I observed them doing their daily work. I saw their interactions. I also saw their lack of interactions, which was fascinating, very fascinating. I also did focus groups where I drew out through open-ended responses to see what was like, just who they were, what they were motivated by, and just had a better understanding of them. I discussed this with my business partner, and together we were able to really draw out the real insights. And we realized the actual issue was a lack of clear expectations. They didn't feel welcome. So these are all things that you may already do with an audience analysis, and I'm asking you to go even a little bit deeper. Um, and there's some very inexpensive ways to achieve this, getting these data and insights. On mass, there's also opportunities to use things like questionnaires, or use the information that's in your LMS. What you'll find as the most rich source of information is when you discuss it, just like I discussed with my business partner. So firstly is definitely the step of get the data. The whole marketing world is actually based on data. It's not this, sexy advertising and stuff. What really comes into play is all the data that fuels the decisions and the strategy. And learning and development is no different. So with that, I actually, in the marketing world, I use data heavily, heavily. I spent most of my time in analysis, um, as well as on the things that would lead to a more exciting strategy. In particular, when I was at Procter and Gamble, I was in charge of the whole Mr. Clean brand. And I use this principle of getting this really deep understanding of my consumer and using insights to shape my strategy. Specifically, I was trying to launch Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, and we did online surveys to understand our consumer overall. We found out that 70% of people actually like the idea of what we were positioning Mr. Clean as an environmental cleaner. Then we found out that only 20% were willing to pay extra for it. Uh-oh. And then only 10% were actually willing to repurchase it. So we use the numbers, we use the data, in this case, quantitative data, to find out where the opportunities were. And this had a huge impact because we were positioning Mr. Clean Magic Eraser as an environmental cleaner. You can, like, I've eaten it. You can eat it. I don't encourage you to do that, but it actually is a pretty good environmental cleaner. That said, not the right strategy for this, clearly no business case. And we dug deeper and uncovered through focus groups what the real impact was. So we did both quantitative and qualitative data. So what does this mean for our learning and development? The key is that you need data and insights to understand the learner. You need data and insights to understand the learner. It's key. And there's different ways of doing both quantitative data, as I've mentioned, and qualitative data. And ideally, you find both can be useful. So the real insights come from what the data tells you and unlocks why people are doing what they do. I personally found that I was able to unlock why people were doing what they do through the qualitative data I did with the onboarding example. So I was trying to find out, hey, why are these new hires, like, better understand them? And as executive, I was wanting to know, why are they not diligent at their work? I found out that 68% of new employees got 3 days of onboarding, okay, through one-on-one interactions with their peer mentor. Fine. And then most of the time they were reading on their own. Okay, data point. I found, though, despite this, most of them were actually bitter, alone, and they felt the company didn't invest in them. And this affected their current performance. Interesting. So it's through this deep understanding of our audience, we're actually able to uncover the fact that they want to show how their work affected the social causes. And interesting because it could, like, it actually did. They were helping through financial literacy more tangentially. It actually did make an difference on just real people, but that wasn't coming through. So we found out that through this audience analysis, there was truly a deeper way to better understand the persona and understand what made this person, this new hire, tick. Still, though, we're only talking data, and we'll get more into how this deeper level of data can actually be used. I find it interesting with using the data as well that we were able to understand is we were actually able to use it to predict future and unstated needs. So things that people wouldn't even necessarily know. So we can use it to uncover gaps. For example, one organization that we were working with, they were actually tracking tenure of all their salespeople. They're tracking individual sales metrics, the time in the role, and the 360-degree feedback. And they were using that to actually identify gaps and trends. And they were actually trying to even use that to foresee what turnover may be. So pretty cool using data just to be able to predict future learner needs in a learner setting. And really, this use of data helps you translate this facts into insights that get you the real needs. So the insights really being the data, just the raw numbers I shared with you, like 68% of new hires, where the insights that we're able to pull out is that, 68% was getting 3 days of training, but realizing, okay, well, what about the the other like 3 weeks when they're left on their own? Okay, pulling out those insights. Those insights really allow you to draw conclusions that can be actionable. So what I'm going to be sharing with you right now actually is a fun activity that we'll try to be able to just practice this yourself. Practice gaining insights and some unstated needs. I'll share with you a video. I'll share with you 2 videos the exact same. One high width, high bandwidth, one other low bandwidth, just so we can make sure they all work. And there's no sound on it, which is great because I really want you to focus on some insights from this video. So notice when you're watching it, the people's level of collaboration. Notice the distractions in their work environment. Notice how they use their office and desk. And notice what they're not doing. So again, there's no right or wrong answers from here, but do look at this video. And I'll encourage everybody to put their thoughts into the chat, and then Anne, I'll love to have your live feedback. Think about what you see happening. I'm going to play the next version. Oh, I'll play this again. And I'll play this other lower bandwidth version twice as well. So interesting work environment. Imagine this is your work environment. And any thoughts here about what you saw?
Well, in the first video you shared with us, I noticed you mentioned paying attention to how they use their desk, and the young woman was sitting on her desk as if she were at home rather in a seat, which is not something you would do in an office environment like that. If you had a standing desk, then obviously you would be standing. And then I noticed as she's speaking to what seems to be perhaps her supervisor sharing a report, she still has her earbuds on. And I don't know about you, but with my headset still on, I'm not really able to hear that well. So those are the 2 things that struck me immediately. And then just trying to see the people in the background, I thought, okay, are we at work? Are we having some fun? What's going on here? And then
Yeah.
Duncan mentioned, yes, there's lots of distractions going on in the workplace. And one of our other viewers, Joanne, had mentioned as well, lots of distractions.
pretty crazy, a pretty crazy work environment to think that this is actually your learner, what they are embarking on. Um, and interesting too, if you're trying to create a course, let's imagine that this is your learner right here. Oh, okay. Um, do and so other things that, is she actually working when she's at work, or is she just going to be socializing? I guess it's a very collegial environment. So lots of distractions. And then what things people often see as well, which is sort of weird, is how they use technology. So clearly she's using technology and is very adept at it, but then also is using paper copies as well. So just some like things you're like, what really is the learner's preference? Are they being forced into certain things? What its actual preferences coming into play? And then thinking further out, okay, if they have to at some point do some type of training, how might this impact the whole training experience? So
Yeah, great point though, because you mentioned them using technology, but then do they have to then use paper reports if they are needing to turn something into a supervisor? And how does that affect the way they work as well? And then Joanne mentions also in the second video, someone seems to be sucked into the environment. That's a great way of putting it.
Awesome. Thank you, Joanne. Awesome to see you here. So this may be, think of this as an observation that you may be quietly observing within an organization. And this is really the whole magic of being able to draw out these qualitative insights in a way that actually costs very little. You're actually just sitting there, able to observe and see what's happening. One of my favorite types. So imagine that you were tasked with the whole idea with this group of learners to produce an e-learning. So that woman there, great. She needs to take this mandatory e-learning. Any thoughts how that would then impact your recommendations? Just put those into the chat, and I'd love to even hear your
Oh,
thoughts.
how would this affect your recommendation to produce an e-learning? Oh,
So she's sitting at her
wow.
computer doing an e-learning.
Just sitting at a computer doing e-learning. Oh, well, obviously the distractions, as most folks had mentioned, I think you would need less of those because it's difficult enough, I think, to focus on training when you're just really by yourself, much less have all these distractions. So that would be one of the first things I would think of.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Perhaps not the best decision, and perhaps
Joanne
um,
mentioned she's thinking M learning.
mobile learning. Yeah, exactly. A much better solution if you had to, force it down to those discussions. Which is why the whole benefit of firstly having a persona for your learners is so important, and which we'll get into the next topic, as well as then being able to get buy-in from along the line. And that's really where the magic is to using your analysis to create the persona enables you to get alignment across the board. So thank you. So imagine now that we've used the data, we've gathered it, we've understand it, we've drawn out insights. We're now going to look at how to specifically use this persona to help us make better training solutions. So a learner persona is really it's a way to bring the data to life. You don't have to have a persona, but it's a pretty cool secret how there's some magic in creating a persona with a name and a backstory that really allows all people to understand it, including the management that I just spoke to. You use it based on real life data, but then you fictionalize it to ensure it comes to life. Um, some things that you may think about when having a persona really are, at every decision point, hey, what does Ava think of this? Does Ava understand the jargon that we're using? In essence, it's just a more useful way to display stats. Um, so of course your persona should come from interviews and data you gather from sample members of your audience, or maybe supervisors if you don't have access to them. The whole mantra as you're creating this is the idea to design for the learner, not the data. The personas help bring it all to life, so you're thinking about, okay, this is a learner, it's a typical actual person, and it even goes a step further beyond a typical audience analysis. We're digging deeper into creating and understanding this person. When I worked on Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, we had a persona. Her name was Cindy, And we actually had her as a mannequin in our office. So it was great to just be able to see her at every turn and go, okay, right, we're creating this for Cindy. Okay, what are Cindy's challenges? How will this help Cindy? Um, and we actually learned through our data that Cindy had this challenge of, there's all these like marks on the walls, and she had to wait to get them repainted. And there's all these cleaning marks that she never thought she could. Um, and it wasn't really until we uncovered that insight, cleaning the marks you never thought you could, that insight when we first launched Mr. Clean Magic Eraser was the key that helped unlock our strategy. And then all of our resulting executions, they all fell into play once we had a solid strategy in place. So if you think about this as you go further, you know, what I typically get as a question is, great, I like the idea of a persona, but hey, I don't have a bunch of data. Like actually, I don't have as much data as you guys in marketing. You guys in marketing have a ton of data, quantitative data, qualitative data. You got it all. I'm just a one person in learning and development, and what am I going to do? For that, I would say, do draw from the data that you have. Ideally, it is the qualitative methods and the quantitative methods I did speak to. Ideally, you are looking and observing the learner. But if you can't, then, second best, maybe talking to the facilitators who interact with the learner, or talking with their managers who do interact with your learner. And then what you'll see that you'll need to do, you'll need to make generalizations to fill in the gaps. You're in essence just looking for those trends in the information, and you will use your professional judgment to make assumptions. So in the example I gathered from my learner persona, about which we named Ava in my onboarding program, I discovered for Ava that she saw her role as a job, and she cared about other people in her life much, much more than this job. She worked at a call center. It was really, it's a job. She was also active in her charities, really active in helping her friends. I also drew insights that by connecting her role to the benefit that it helped to help the demarginalized people that she actually did help. By that, drawing those inferences together, Ava was actually more able to be engaged in the learning. So we brought her to life through images and such. Um, but this is a snippet of what Ava may say. Hey, I'm Ava. My friends call me Supergirl because once a week I volunteer at a women's shelter. I like to hang with my friends on the other nights. I can't wait till my call center shift is done so I can hang with my peeps. So we very intentionally chose her name and created a whole backstory against her. Really, where the fun of it, though, is bringing it to life now by giving her the backstory, by giving her a name and such. So you really drive your persona from the insights. So some things specifically to look at when you're doing your data gathering or making inferences for data you don't have is look at things like behavior patterns. Look at your personas, short and long-term goals. Look at their needs, the attitudes, beliefs, and opinions that your learners may have, the skills that they want or need to have, and think about the context and background of all this information in their life. Think further. Okay, hey, where does she? Or in this case, I'm thinking Ava. Where does she? How does she get to work? How long is her commute? What is she doing in her spare time? What is she doing when she's at her work? When she's doing at breaks? And thinking about it further, when you're actually trying to apply this information, think about, hey, what does Ava know about this topic already? Does she, what design elements will really help Ava be successful in the course, in her life? Hey, and does she even care about the training? So at every turn, you're asking, what would Ava think? Does this meet Ava's needs? And then a way just to bring that all to life is using images, which we'll show to shortly as a way to help bring it to life. So I'm going to get us to do a fun, quick idea. So imagine that this here is your learner, and she is your some of your qualitative data that you're going to base your learner persona on. Imagine that you work at a tech company. No, actually, let's imagine that you work. Let me see some information here. Imagine that your audience is finance professionals who have good internet connections, so there aren't any barriers to create an e-learning. This is their work environment, as you've observed here. They're in finance. The people are as you've observed them in terms of their age, and you're trying to hone in on an archetype, a learner persona. Specifically, you're using this person here as your source of inspiration. We'd love to see you just even type into the chat a potential name for your persona. And then I'll read out how we've brought this to life through other interactive activities. So in particular, I'm looking to see if names are going to be like Gertrude, Agnes. I'm thinking of the names of my great aunts, actually. Sarah. Okay, that's cool. There's some difference that comes too with a name. We very intentionally gave our Cindy the name for our Mystically Magic Eraser persona. We had choices. Again, you could go back to like Susan and other particular names that connote, or Jordan, names that connote very different ages. Bonnie, I love it. Yes, that's good. So even with that one little thing of just the name, I'm able to actually see a better picture into your mind. I'm going to read now what people at the sessions I've delivered this live have said about this particular character. They, in essence, filled out a fill in the blank activity. And this is by far the most common theme that I'm reading out here. And I'm going to Canadianize this for today because we've got some Canadians on the line. So imagine this person here is Jen. Jen, age 23, is a graduate of McGill University and has been at Finance Inc. for 2 years as a junior finance analyst. In one word, her friends would describe her as bubbly. Her manager thinks her skill levels are very strong. While at work, she's motivated by social interactions. Her job would improve if she could fix the idea of working from home. More than anything, she wishes that she could travel the world. She feels that workplace learning is boring, and she'll likely complete her workplace training in a cafe and in spurts. So any thoughts on if that is somewhat a surprise or if that's somewhat in line with what you're thinking? Just put that into the chat. Interestingly enough, when giving this particular topic many, many, many times all over North America, the responses are really the same. People change the name a bit and they change the school, but in general, it's always the same. And what comes through is this whole appreciation and understanding of, hey, if this is our learner, Jen, oh, I need to be empathetic towards her needs to have quiet space to do her work, to provide that social interaction that she likely craves, to really rethink about how it may be best to have any type of learning interactions. So it's just a really interesting way to just get that better empathy. And this also fits very well with design thinking and empathy maps. And take your learning solutions hence a step further. And what I also find fascinating is that I'm confident that you are more likely to remember what I've shared about Jen just because she has a story. The same data points think of it in an Excel document. Okay, average age 23, average marital status, 52% went to McGill University, like whatever, it's just data. Because now suddenly your persona has a backstory, it's more likely to have some sticking power that enable you to then create better learning solutions. So the idea of creating better learning solutions comes into play with our final step, is really using this persona to make decisions. Now that you have the persona, now is the time to think about what the best executions could be. Now is the time to think about, hey, if having this sizzle video to get people to do onboarding training more, now you make that decision, because you'd be well informed to realize that's clearly not the right solution. Um, just like we saw in the marketing example, that people often jump to executions, and I constantly see that. We see that as well within learning development. So having this full grounding in the learner persona will really allow you to create the best strategies. So too often in learning and development, we get pulled into defining the e-learning requirements. It has to be the seat time. We know from the start we need to have 5 videos. We know from the start we need three characters that are interwoven through with irrelevant examples. We're defined into from the start what could be irrelevant information. Okay, the course has to be this long, because we need to sell it for this amount. Like, uh, ideally, we could all start with a strategy, and instead of thinking about, okay, where there's some of those execution places, think about instead, what are we not doing? Where are strategic priorities? Where does the strategic initiative fit? As I mentioned, the organization wanted this brand new onboarding training video to give them some sizzle, um, and so they're motivated when they started their work. Instead, we understood this deep understanding of our persona, that we could motivate Ava more by connecting her work to the social causes it helped. No video is needed for that. It's just really reframing and rethinking about how to position everything that was occurring. So with this I thought in mind, think back to Jen, our 23-year-old bubbly, well, she's been in the company for a few years, fairly new hire, who wants to travel the world and loves social interaction and thinks training's boring. Any ideas what you may recommend as a training solution for her? Just put something into the chat. We saw so far the idea of mobile learning, but even let's think big. This is some finance related topic, but it can be anything. What could be some other better ways, knowing now that Jen loves social interaction? She loves to travel the world. She thinks training's boring. She's bubbly. I'm seeing some responses here to, yes, include social learning in her training. Definitely. Um, Definitely some ways to help harness that energy. Some other things that I've also people have recommended is look at a combination of small group discussions where people can actually collaborate, like live. Here we go, group activities, as Duncan's saying, and even if that needs to be blended with some of the more digital solutions, projects. Ooh, I love that. Actually, Duncan, that's great, because that could truly harness the energy that Jen may have and the social interactions, and realizing, of course, that Jen is an archetype of everybody. Doing something with travel, like traveling the world through our training, gaming elements on a board, points into the next country. Yeah, so there's this passport theme to it. Um, this is awesome. These are the types of cool, creative ideas that we can then use to springboard to create truly effective training. Social learning, social media, tweet out. I love that. This suddenly is so much different than just a boring finance related e-learning that, she's going to have to she's going to click through while she has her headphones listening to music in her distracted environment that she really doesn't care about. Um, is there a way to do Instagram live? Is there a way to do having this interaction come into play and people are interacting with each other and building from each other? In this case, can provide such a much more richer solution. Um, so one of the things that is so key with learning from marketing is to now incorporate everything that we've discussed and actually incorporate these new ideas into your life. So we have talked a lot about this idea of actually creating a persona. Use qualitative and quantitative data, whatever you have. Actually go in, observe if you can, have discussions with learners as you can, or with their managers or facilitators as such, and now use them in creating a fictional character with a full backstory. the full backstory can also be brought to life through images, as we did in our training example, or we can go pretty creative as we did in Mystically Magic Racer and have an actual mannequin there. The whole thought, though, is that it comes to life in your work. So now I want you to try and incorporate some of this new ideas. Not just this even as a new idea, but the other ideas that you can learn from marketing and other industries to really become the springboard to creating better learning solutions. Because we now have a solid understanding, presumably, of who a learner is, the data that fuels our persona, now we're able to do those executions. So my suggestions are things to constantly seek inspiration. So keep things like an ideas folder brought to life. I constantly am getting inspired by billboards. I actually love billboards. Websites. Oh my gosh, I've got so much coolest websites I use as inspiration for e-learning executions. Now that I know who my persona is in a particular piece, I may have better empathy and inclination to what type of design ideas that she best likes. I even tag key emails I like. I constantly have this great ideas folder that I can refer to when I'm starting a new project, and really it's in line with a deep understanding of my persona. Coupled with that, I also seek ideas from other industries. I'm learning lots right now from product management industry, which I find fascinating, graphic design, just like tangential industries. And you can even heighten that further, even by just having these interactions with other people. Learning lots right now from a very famous YouTuber, Robin Gummer, who's telling me all about yesterday. She's telling me all about video and how you can best use video. And I'm now putting that into my ideas folder. And hey, how can I better use video and even a one-man show video into my training solutions? Again, rooted in the understanding of my learner. In this case, that information would apply very well to this persona Jen we're speaking to. I'm able to truly seek and vet ideas from other industries. And the last, I encourage you to actually, attend as you can other webinars from other industries, other conferences or trade shows. I've had fun actually just, you know, crashing or going for the free conferences where there's free trade shows and getting a sense for, hey, what are people talking about and what are some ideas I can apply. I took some ideas actually even just from walking on the trade show floor at a sales conference about some ways to connect with my learners. Now that I have a thorough understanding of who they are, looking at the filter of these myriad of ideas, I'm able to choose these things, and keeping them all in an ideas folder becomes such a rich resource for later executions. I also see other people in the industry do this fantastic. Here's an example from Michael of Key Point Learning Blog. He actually got inspiration from this Tesla website you see here, and it's designed as a marketing site for consumers. The page describes the Model X car, and it has a really neat JavaScript interaction that lets you open the door on the website. Pretty cool. He took that inspiration and he created a whole effect of this same thing through sliders. So it's a pretty cool example of directly taking an idea from marketing and borrowing it and putting it into our executions. The other thing that what makes this all work as you are borrowing ideas, though, is this idea of us test and learn. I was very fortunate in my marketing career to have a very, very robust test and learn budget. So all the time we were able to come up with ideas and test them in market. So here we were creating concept drawings and then we prototyped it roughly, as you can see. And this is helpful because it was getting the kinks out of our whole design process. And then in market, we're able to test different media executions typically. So testing something like Instagram Live. Yeah. We could do that in the marketing world, but hey, why not do that in learning and development? As we're coming up with new ideas that can be helpful to best resonate with our learner persona, now that we understand them, why not test different ideas? It's a new way of thinking that I don't see as much happen in learning and development as in marketing. But there's even very low cost, low risk ways to help achieve that and just, again, get the kinks out. I'll leave you the list of different marketing thought leaders if you are looking to expand your repertoire into other industries to borrow from. here are some that I follow that I really like. And I'm also happy to share a fuller list. These ones, particular ones I'm sharing with here, relate to the strategy pieces that we're speaking about today, understanding your learner and then the resulting strategy. So in essence, what we've discovered today is some of the most successful programs have a deep understanding of their learner through a learner persona. We've looked at the first step, which is the essential part to gather data, to draw the insights. Secondly, to using this analysis to actually create your persona. And then thirdly, using this persona to make better learning and development decisions. And this is all we're then able to incorporate and filter these new ideas that we can even borrow from other industries to create stronger training programs. And I wanted to tie back to this original example I shared with you about the baby food that I saw people giving out at the train station. Rather than give out baby food at a train station to everybody, perhaps a better solution if I was them would be first understanding my learners or my consumers and realizing that, okay, I might do an immersive experience with a target audience. I may observe them. I may see what's happening. I may do some focus groups. I may just look at some of the data. But from that deep understanding, I would then realize that my target consumer is middle to upper class mothers who believe organic food is an expression of their love by protecting their children from toxins. And they believe in parenting without compromise. So suddenly, from a marketing perspective that any of us here today can see, I've suddenly really narrowed down who we're focusing on. Then I would look at some of the ideas I may borrow from other industries to bring this to life. With that narrow audience in mind, I may decide to target consumers maybe only through trusted bloggers, only through baby shows, organic food shows, and I would stop giving out these stupid coupons on the street corner. I may further look to borrow examples from other industries and think about maybe, I see these baby swaddle carriers that they're been using at yoga shows. Maybe I can borrow that idea from a completely different industry. Maybe I can borrow that with my organic baby food, and maybe I can have a promotion through yoga shows or through yoga studios. The whole point of this, it's essential to first have the understanding of who your, in this case, consumer is, or who your learner is. And Joanne gets it. Thank you. Yeah, go to Whole Foods, make sure your focus is there, not on the street corner. And likewise with our onboarding example, it's not the sizzle video that created the right strategy in the end and the right execution. A video is just one execution piece. It's stopping, having that idea of, okay, this is our persona Ava, what actually resonates best with her, and then how can I recreate our learning programs to best meet her needs. So with that, I will turn it over to questions. And I'm also happy to share a summary, an infographic summary that distills everything I've discussed today into one cool infographic and a really helpful worksheet. So this is actually what I use to create personas. I've it's a helpful worksheet. I use this worksheet. It's helps organize your thoughts. From there, you can then bring it to life.
I love that. So I actually have a couple questions. I was watching your session. I was like, just with just a few minor tweaks, that could be my workshop. I do a workshop on user personas, and it's funny that, and that's exactly what I have my attendees do too. They name their personas so that you think of them as a real person. And so I love the fact that you were calling Cindy or learner persona Cindy. Now, you had mentioned in filling in the gaps to make generalizations. So, what can help you make these assumptions without having your own bias come in?
Yeah, that's why it's so key of a few things. One, gathering a wide spectrum of data. So realizing, of course, you've got limited data, but I wouldn't just go to supervisors to get my data. If let's say I can't even interact with my learners, I may go to supervisors and the facilitators. You'll like you will have a bias if you yourself are not getting um, into it with enough range. So that's really key.
Yeah, and it is so hard sometimes to gather that data and the insights, as you mentioned. And then I know you talked about testing what you learned. So, if you don't have marketing's budget, how do you go about doing that in L&D? What are some steps that folks can take?
Yeah, so in the L&D world, testing becomes much more simple. So if most of us listening are not in marketing, then you won't know otherwise. So it's okay. And you might need to be quiet about how it can work in marketing. But what we've done is we've created, like I've literally created, okay, let's create a social a media site to support this training, and let's see how that works or doesn't work. Let's just but positioned as trying. I did another one where we were trying to do a live tweet through a live classroom session. So tested that out, find out what worked, what didn't work. Other things that we've done is we've done at a more crude, basic level, creating it happened to be interactive PDF, but think of it as a job aid
Okay.
to help people understand the concept better, and then tested it with a working group to see if this could be useful or not. Um, the key with all those test and learns and learning development is they could become quite cheap, cheap and easy to do, but
Yes.
we don't have the budget, so
Not right. It won't blow your L&D budget. And not to put in a shameless plug here, but Risk has a PDF annotator, and that just made me think of that when you were talking about an interactive PDF, where the training's on a PDF, and the learners can then make their own annotations, or the supervisors can come in and figure out where the content is not meeting their needs exactly. So that is a great tool. And then about what some of the groups mentioning social learning, right? Forum discussions probably to help with some of the testing. So like opinion groups that we would have, or focus groups that we would have in marketing, but not as high budget.
exactly. That
But
annotator sounds like a great way to be able to do some test and learn of that as an idea even.
yes. So, if you guys want to talk to Risk about the PDF annotator, reach out to Duncan Wilder. Again, not to throw in a shameless plug there, but that is a great tool for what you were saying with testing. So this has been a great session. If anyone has any additional comments or questions, please feel free to drop it in there. I've greatly enjoyed it because from a marketing standpoint, it makes a lot of sense for me. And it's great that you've been able to take this and translate it into the L&D world and help folks, because you're absolutely right. I mean, this will not only make for effective learning programs, probably save you some money in the long run as well.
Yeah, too often I think we've all been victim of creating training programs that we know are not effective. We know it,
Just like,
right?
right, like the organic baby food coupon.
Yeah. And creating personas and getting buy into them can really help alleviate that.
Yes. And one other thing I did want to ask, is it something that creating those learner personas, is it something that is ever evolving? I mean, because you create the content, but possibly it, as other employees are hired on, it may have to evolve.
Yes, very good question. So they should evolve. What we typically don't is we actually in practice, I don't think we update them as much as we could. It's just then it becomes the 80 for the 20. Okay.
Right.
This is generally how our persona is that we've decided to invest in and invest the time in, realizing that yeah, there's some like slight evolutions that continue to happen, but nothing. The thing with personas is they're generally made to be so um, they're generally made to be lasting.
Yeah.
You're not going to change it every year by any means.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And we just got some comments. It's a wonderful session. Very insightful. Thank you. Thank you to Danielle. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today. That was absolutely, again, insightful and wonderful. And if you are catching the replay, please feel free to drop in your comments or questions. We will make sure that they are forwarded to Danielle. We will also make sure to include information on how to connect with her on Twitter and on LinkedIn. I think Twitter is probably one of the best ways to get in touch with you. I see you're fairly active on there, as we were talking about some different social media channels and whatnot. And don't forget to sign up for her monthly blog post.
Yeah, at beyondthesky.ca.
Yeah. So thank you again, Danielle. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. And we will see you next time on Learning Collective.
Thank you.